Guys, I'm finally back. I know it's been probably 2 months since I made a video, and I'm really sorry about that. I had crap going on, and then I had finals, and then during break I was just lazy, honestly. But now I am back at school, as you can tell, and I have today off school because it's like a negative 25 degrees outside with the wind chill, and I also have tomorrow off school, so I thought this would be a good time to kind of ease back into it and try to start making videos again, because I realized I started this project a year and a half ago, and I still haven't made it through the first season, and there's 7 seasons, so I actually really want to, get this off the ground and really start dedicating more of my time to it, being more creative with the whole project, and this is as good a time as I need to do it, because it's the new year, I might as well start off fresh. I'm trying to think of any updates to give you guys. I'm still working on this book, A Rock in a Hard Place. That's actually what I'm going to be reading today. I think I have about 10 episodes left in the first season. Hopefully I can get through that. I just want to finish the first season, and then I will be starting on the second season, but I want to find more books to do for reviews. I want to do branching out, do reviewing more things, making more creative videos, and just, I don't know, having more fun with this and actually sticking with it, because the more consistently I do these videos, the more fun I have with them. Also, I still am recording with my webcam, which is why the quality is bad and why the lighting is horrific in here. I'm sorry about that. But I think I told you guys that they upgraded to Windows 8. Windows 8 doesn't support MPEG, so I can't, that's how, like, the format that my video camera films in, so I can't edit those on here. And I can't find the right codecs to download, and I've just been downloading all this weird crap to my computer. Not pretty. So hopefully I will be figuring it out eventually, but until then we're just going to have to deal with the bad quality. But anyway, I am reading chapter 9 of this today. As you can tell, I'm less than halfway through it, so I need to get a move on. So hopefully, I stick with this more.
Engage.
Although the terrain of Starlight had naturally been smoothed out for the creation of the so-called tourist center of Paradise, there were still some rocky areas. William T. Riker was seated on one now, gazing heavenward thoughtfully. He remembered ancient legends of gods who had offended their superiors and been cast out, never more to share the kingdom of heaven. Riker, of course, didn't have enough of an inflated ego to think he was a god, but he had walked among the stars, seen them race past him in the dazzling array that he had come to accept as an everyday occurrence. He had taken it for granted. Now, to look up into the sky and see the stars just sitting there, unmoving blobs of light against a black background, it just seemed wrong somehow. Riker wanted to urge the planet to kick into warp 2, leap forward through the stars, and bring them close enough to touch once more. No, not a god, merely a mortal who was getting a taste of what it was like for a god to be sentenced to the world of mortals. A soft voice spoke suddenly from behind him. "Commander?" Riker turned, knowing who he would see before he saw her. "Hello, Steffi." She smiled shyly as she approached him. "You want to be alone or something?" "You mean, do I mind if you join me?" She bobbed her head. "Go right ahead." She sat down next to him on a rock, a little too close. He slid over a few inches, provided a discreet amount of distance between the two of them. "What do you think of the planet so far?" she asked. "Well, aside from the wild thing trying to eat me yesterday, it's been pretty calm," he said agreeably. "Your father's quite a man, trying to carve out a life for people here." She half shrugged. "I guess." Riker smiled at that. Somehow the children of great people always seemed underwhelmed by their parents. No matter what their accomplishments, there was still the attitude of, "Yeah, but it's just Dad," or "But it's only Mom." "You miss your ship?" she said. "How can you tell?" "The way you stare off into the skies like that, like the stars are your home." He nodded. "They are, really. In a way, the history of space travel and exploration is the same as what is happening on this planet." She looked around skeptically. Far in the distance, beyond the friendly confines of a metamorphosized atmosphere, lightning crackled in the sky. "You're kidding, right?" "No, I'm not kidding," he said with a laugh. "Space travel is glamorous," she said wistfully. "Go to strange, far-off planets and meet exotic life forms that want to eat you," he finished. She shook her head and poked him on the shoulder. "Now you're making fun of me. Come on, space exploration is nothing like this." "You're looking at space traveling as it is now, and comparing it to this world as it is now. That's hardly fair. Space exploration in its early days was so dangerous they only sent animals up." She blinked at that. "Animals flew the starships?" There were no starships, he laughed. He held his hands out, palms facing each other about a foot apart. There were space capsules about this big. Well, that's an exaggeration, but not much bigger than that. All that the early space explorers, they were called astronauts, could do was sit for days at a time, and all the capsules could do was orbit the Earth. When they landed on the moon, it was a major event. Do you have a girlfriend? Riker blinked in surprise. He had forgotten that talking with Wesley Crusher, who spoke casually on linear tracks, was not the typical interaction one had with a teenager. Steffi was suddenly no longer interested in discussing the relative merits of early versus modern space travel. Indeed, from the direction of the topic drift, it seemed likely that she hadn't been all that interested in the first place. A girlfriend? He asked. Back on your ship, she said. You know, a girlfriend. Or, she hesitated, a fiancé, or wife, or wives. He laughed at that. No, no wife or wives. No girls you're close to? Oh, there's women I'm close to. How close? He looked at her curiously. What, do you want names and dates? He gazed off into the sky. I'm just curious as to how a guy who looks like you isn't hooked with any one woman, that's all. I mean, I would have thought that someone would have... Well, his voice trailed off. Now she leaned forward eagerly. There is someone, isn't there? Her tone was a mixture of eagerness and disappointment. Could that be? There's someone who has an emotional grasp, let's say. Meaning she's always in your thoughts. He nodded. That's a very apt way of putting it. So you and she are together now. We were. Now we're friends. Well, more than friends, but it's kind of complicated. I'm good at complicated things. He sighed. Let's just say that we had something and we're reluctant to rekindle it because the timing's not right. For who? He sighed. Oh. Riker laughed and shook his head. You're like a dog with his teeth and a bone. You're not easy to shake loose, are you? Nope. And what about you? Said Riker, hoping to turn things round a bit. You have anyone? In this place? She made a derisive noise. You're kidding, right? There isn't anyone else here your age? Well, sure there is, yeah, but the guys are so immature. That will change. Not soon enough for me, she said forcefully. She put a hand on Riker's knee. Riker looked at it for a moment, and then very gently removed her hand from his knee. Steffi, he said. The kids call me Stephanie, she said hopefully. It sounds more grown up. But the adults call you Steffi, Riker said as kindly as he could. I'm an adult, and your father's friend, and, well, I prefer a more mature woman. The minute he said it, he wished he'd thought of a better phrase. Mature, she said, quietly smoldering. Do you have any idea what my responsibilities are around here? How hard I work? How I'm out there breaking my butt day in, day out alongside the adults? But if you can't look beyond your age, Commander Riker, then that is your problem. She stood. For that matter, I'm not sure what you thought I was implying by paying polite attention to you. Excuse me, I have ground samplings I should be reviewing. You, of course, are more than welcome to remain here and continue to think about the more mature women in your life. And she turned and stalked off. Riker sighed. Why was it that every single teenager he encountered seemed to be in such a damned hurry to grow up? Wesley Crusher, his irritation evident, sat on the edge of one of the sickbay beds and said, I can't believe you're on his side, Mom. You didn't hear the things he said. Wes, not now, please. Beverly Crusher was working on the forehead of a sobbing 4-year-old girl, Jenny, who was lying flat and trembling. Her mother stood anxiously nearby, her hands fluttering nervously. All that blood, her mother wailed. I thought she's fine. Aren't you fine, sweetheart? Beverly smiled down at the child. The doctor had just finished wiping away the last of the blood that had covered the child's face. Her blonde hair was still matted with it, but that could be attended to shortly. The child sniffled in response. I told her not to run, her mother said for the 10th time since she dashed into the sickbay, the hysterically crying child in her arms. The mother's blouse still had bloodstains on it, mixed with tears. It's really going to be all right, Beverly said again. It seemed to her that the mother was far more upset than the child. Head wounds always look much worse than they are. There's a lot of bleeding, but now, see, that's the laceration. And indeed, there was the source of the bleeding, high on the child's forehead. It was about a half-inch long, nasty-looking and inflamed, but not especially serious. Beverly reached for a small device that was shaped like an orange peel. She held it over the girl's head, and a faint glowing from within the device highlighted the child for a moment. This won't hurt at all, said Crusher. Really? Sniffed the girl. Really? Sniffed the mother. Really, confirmed Beverly. She placed the device on the child's forehead. The child winced reflexively, anticipating pain, but there was none. Within minutes, Beverly removed it, and there was no more cut, merely a pinkish line that was already fading and blending in with her skin. There, said Beverly, all done. No more? asked Jenny. No more, said the doctor. You can get up. But slowly, Wesley warned from nearby. Wouldn't want your head to fall off. A brief look of alarm crossed the child's face, and Bev shot her boy genius son an annoyed glance. He's kidding, Jenny. I'm kidding, confirmed Wesley. Jenny sat up carefully, checking her neck just in case to affirm that her head was still attached. I tried to watch her, her mother said, feeling guilty. It's all right, said Beverly. No matter how carefully they build a starship, a running child is always going to find some sharp edge somewhere to crack her head against. You slow down from now on, okay? She said to Jenny, who nodded eagerly. Bev watched the two of them go, shaking her head. Centuries ago, she said, for a minor thing like that, first they would have had to inject with metal needles and an anesthetic that would give her a lump on her skull like this. She made a circle with her thumb and forefinger. Then they would sew it up with sutures. Then they have to cut them off, and it leaves scars. Sounds nice, said Wesley. As nice as you sounded, she said, remembering that she was annoyed with him. She slapped him lightly on the knee. Your head will fall off. Good Lord, Wesley, where's your bedside manner? Here I hear all these things about how you've become so mature and responsible in my absence. Then you say brilliant things like that. I was just kidding. Besides, not everyone thinks I'm so mature. No one will if you keep acting the way you did. She was briskly putting her instruments away. You should have heard him on the bridge, Mom. Commander Stone was saying I shouldn't be on the bridge. Commander Stone doesn't know you or what you're capable of, his mother said calmly. Well, he shouldn't jump to conclusions. He should trust Captain Picard's judgment that I belong there. She slid the door closed and looked a bit sad. To be honest, Wes, I don't think Commander Stone trusts much of anyone. He's been through a lot. Wes tilted his head curiously. Like what? Like things I can't discuss, his mother said primly. Like things that are protected by doctor-patient confidentiality. Like shouldn't you be somewhere else, she added, ruffling his hair fondly. I have things to do. Right. He slid off the bed and started to head out. Then he turned and said, By the way, O'Brien was very anxious to know if you would be at next week's poker game. She winced and shooed her son away. Wesley went up to the 10 forward lounge, intending to talk with Guinan. His mother had been right, of course, but still he had the feeling that she didn't quite understand. In his mother's absence, Wes had found that the 10 forward's hostess has always made a sympathetic and understanding ear, even better than his mother in a way. When Guinan gave advice, Wesley felt that he could take it or not at his discretion. With his mother, however, there always seemed to be an attitude of, if you don't take my advice, why did you ask me for? He breezed into 10 forward and stopped short. Stone was sitting there, nursing a drink. He glanced up, caught Wesley's eye. Wanting to avoid a fight, Wesley started to back up. Stone didn't move, except his hand. He waggled a finger at Wes, making quite clear that he wanted Wes to join him. He outranks me, Wes thought unhappily. Gulping deeply, he walked over and sat down across the table from Stone. Stone eyed him thoughtfully for a moment and then said, I've been checking up on you. Really? Wes didn't know what to make of that. Stone nodded. Pretty impressive. They call you the Brain Trust, I hear. Wesley sighed. I hate that name. Why? Because it makes you ashamed of your accomplishments? Wes looked up in surprise. That's it exactly. Never let anyone do that to you, Stone said flatly. Always make them come up to your level. Never descend to theirs. He sipped his drink, and Wes watched him, filled with curiosity. Wes remembered the little girl and said, indicating Stone's face, My mom could fix up those scars, like the one on your face. What, this? He pointed at it. Heidelberg fencing scar. My father was a fencing instructor there, in fact. He taught me everything I know. Not everything he knew, of course. He paused. He didn't have the chance. Why? Said Wes. Stone paused and seemed to be visually dissecting Wes. Can I trust you? He said at length. Sure, said Wes. I mean, really trust you. For example, I don't need any of this getting back to your mother. I wouldn't mention it if you didn't want me to, said Wes. He was now totally confused. He had thought that Stone couldn't stand him, and now Stone was acting as if Wes was his long-lost brother or something. I don't... Stone stopped short, and then started again hesitantly. I don't talk about myself much. Never a good idea. Don't give out pieces of yourself. I understand, said Wes, who didn't. But you... looked at him appraisingly. You remind me of myself when I was at your age. Wes squinted, trying to see the resemblance. It was not readily apparent. If you say so, sir. Oh, sorry about that. I'm getting over a cold. I've been coughing a lot. All right. I say so, he nodded. Stupid accident. You know, when you fence, you're supposed to have safety tips on the points. So you don't stab somebody, Wesley said. Stone smiled thinly. Exactly. So that you don't stab somebody. He paused. My father's best student and he were having a marvelous match, dazzling. Blades moved so quickly they were a blur. You heard the duel rather than saw. Stone stopped speaking for a long moment. Wesley prompted. And? And the student's safety tip fell off during one particular engagement. They didn't notice, and the student reposited and thrust, fully extending. The blade slipped in under the bib of the mask, right here. He tapped the base of his throat at the collarbone, and kept on going, came out the back of my dad's neck, made a slight whistling sound, and mimed the action. Wesley felt the blood drain from his face. Oh, man, he whispered. Were you there? Of course I was there, Stone said, sounding distant. I saw my father slide down off the sword, and I ran forward, screaming. And the student was so horrified that he stepped back, yanking the sword away. He didn't see that I was right behind him, and the sword whipped around. And that's how you got the scar on your face, Wes said, in sudden understanding. Stone nodded. I was lucky, really. Fraction of an inch one way, my eye is gone. Another way, my ear is lopped off. As it was, he shrugged. That must have been awful. How old were you? I was a kid. He paused and slid closer to Wes. That's why I reacted the way I did. I saw something horrible when I was young, before I was ready, and I can tell you I was never the same. So I was alarmed at the thought of hurrying you along. Enjoy being a kid. Don't be in a rush to grow up. It's not all it's cracked up to be. It's not, huh? Said Wes with a small laugh. He felt himself beginning to relax with Stone. No, it's not. When you're young, you think that you grow up and all the answers to everything appear in your head. You won't be stupid anymore. Adulthood is the realization that stupidity is permanent and terminal. Oh, I don't know, said Wes. I know lots of smart adults, like my mom and Captain Picard. Everyone is stupid, he repeated more firmly. There's different degrees, and some people are better at hiding it than others, but it's congenital. And slowly he shook his head. See what happens when bad things happen to you when you're young? You become cranky and cynical like me. You're lucky you don't have to deal with that. Wesley looked down hesitantly, and then up again. I know what it's like, he said. My dad died when I was little. Stone looked stricken. No. Oh, kid, I'm sorry. I had no idea. I assumed your father was an officer somewhere on the ship. So it's just you and your mother? Wes nodded. For a while it was just me, but Mom came back to the Enterprise. It's really great having her back, but, you get to the point where she's still trying to treat me like a kid. And I've had so much responsibility while she was gone that it's hard to be what she expects and what Captain Picard expects and switch back and forth. Be what you expect and let others switch back and forth, said Stone firmly. Suddenly, Wes realized the time. Uh-oh, I have a lesson in astrodynamics I have to get to. Then you better get to it, Stone smiled, that same damned weird smile, but Wes decided to think nothing of it. So Stone was a little offbeat. Everyone had their quirks. Wes stood, and to his surprise, Stone stood with him and extended a hand. Wesley shook it, endeavoring to squeeze as hard as he could, and Stone nodded curtly. Wes grinned. There was nothing like a firm man-to-man handshake to kick up a few notches in your personal self-esteem. He stopped, turned, and said, You're nothing like Commander Riker. He walked out. Stone sat back down, and immediately all the signs of relaxation vanished from his body. It reverted to a tense whipcord position. He sat broodingly until he detected, rather than heard, a soft foot fall behind him. He glanced around at the odd woman behind him. And you are? Guinan, she replied, her voice pleasantly melodic. I'm the hostess. He frowned and said, You aren't in the ship's records. I'm flattered you checked. She seated herself opposite him. She was dressed in a long, flowing blue robe that gave no hint to the shape of her body. A hat of matching color that looked like a flying saucer sat perched precariously on her head. He had seen her smiling at others from the corner of his eye, and had been warm and genuine, but now there was the same sort of mirthlessness that was in his own smile. He found it stimulating. Continuing, she asked, You've been researching the ship's personnel. The main officers, yes, as soon as I learned I'd be coming aboard. The others I've been looking up when I've had time. Yet, she said, you act as if things that are told to you are revelations. He took her measure and found her intriguing. He lowered his guard a fraction, with as much as he ever lowered it. People like to talk about themselves. They can't do that if they know you know it all. Slowly she shook her head. It's a game to you, isn't it? He made no reply. Then her voice changed, becoming lower and more intense. These people are my friends. Still he made no reply. Stay away from Beverly Crusher. At that he blinked, then sighed in relief. There it is, he said. The challenge. Yes. The threat. You are threatening, then? He asked with detached amusement. Promising. Promising trouble. You could make trouble now. You could make more. And you could make great good, but you have to do it yourself. If I stop you, you'll never get better. He looked at her askance. What are you saying? I'm saying stay away from Beverly. She's off limits and whatever mind games you're playing. Mind games, he said tightly. Is that what you think? She's in mourning. For her husband? There was open incredulity on his face. It's been a decade, more. And every day for every year of that decade, she hasn't shaken the notion that somehow her husband is going to walk through that door. Even though she watched them put his body in the ground, she still hasn't admitted the unfairness of it all. You know a great deal about matters, said Stone. I know everything, she replied. Everything? Yes, it's easier. That way I don't have to be selective. She paused. Beverly is a walking open wound. Don't touch her. Or what? You'll stick Picard on me? He laughed. Worse. Troy. Stone leaned back, looking at Guinan as if trying to figure out whether she was joking or not. Troy. Yes. You've built enough walls that Picard can't get to you. But Troy could. You have a vivid imagination, Guinan, replied Stone. Walls, eh? She nodded. Stone walls. But deep inside those walls, where you're hiding, you know what Troy could do? Burn. She lifted her head slightly in curiosity. What? Burn, he repeated. Troy burned. When something entered that great city, something that had things hidden within, it overran Troy. And Troy burned with a glorious light. There was nothing left but ruins. The Trojan horse. He nodded. The Trojan horse. He rose from his seat, looking down at Guinan. You think she could handle me? Easily. You'd warn her. I wouldn't have to, said Guinan. There's nothing I could tell her that she doesn't already know. Oh, said Stone, I see. She knows everything, too. No, but she's not lazy like me. She's selective, and she knows the right things. That's comforting, he said. He turned and started to head out of the 10 forward lounge. From behind him, Guinan called, It wouldn't hurt you to learn the difference between right things and wrong things, too. He stopped, turned, and smiled that bizarre smile. I know them, he said. I just don't believe them. And that's the end of chapter 9. I really appreciate you guys sticking with me through that, or through this whole thing, all the gaps where I haven't really made videos. And to new people, thank you for popping in, and I will be making more videos now, so hopefully you stick around as well. One last thing, quick shout out to my friend Kiercat, who painted me this beautiful painting of the TARDIS and Wibbly Wobbly Timey Wimey, because I absolutely love Doctor Who, so thank you.